I have spent 50 years studying the laws of the universe, mapping the curvature of space-time, and peering into the quantum foam that underlies reality itself. But nothing in my career prepared me for what I'm about to tell you about 3I Atlas, an object that just transmitted something that should not exist. Before we begin, I need you to do something critical. Comment your city name below and tell me if you've noticed anything unusual in the night sky over the past 6 months, any anomalies, any lights that move in patterns that defy conventional aircraft behavior, because what I'm about to share may change the way you see humanity's place in the universe. It was a Tuesday morning when I received the call, the kind of call that theoretical physicists rarely get from operational space agencies. The voice on the other end was trembling slightly, controlled but urgent, asking if I could come to the Jet Propulsion Laboratory immediately for what they called a consultation on an astronomical anomaly of unprecedented nature. When NASA uses the word unprecedented, you drop everything. The drive to Pasadena felt longer than usual, my mind racing through possibilities, supernovae, gamma-ray bursts, perhaps a gravitational wave detection that didn't match our models. But when I entered the secured conference room and saw the faces of the astronomers and astrophysicists gathered there, I knew this was something else entirely. These were not the excited faces of scientists who had made a remarkable discovery. These were the haunted expressions of people who had glimpsed something that violated their understanding of reality itself. The lead astronomer, someone I've known for 20 years, dimmed the lights and brought up the data on the central display. "It's about 3I Atlas," she said quietly. And I felt my pulse quicken because 3I Atlas is not just any interstellar object. It is the fourth confirmed visitor from beyond our solar system, a comet that originated in a star system we cannot identify, traveling through the cosmic void for potentially millions of years before its trajectory brought it into our neighborhood. It was discovered by the Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System, hence the name Atlas, and classified as interstellar based on its hyperbolic orbit and velocity that exceeded anything gravitationally bound to our sun. We had been tracking 3I Atlas for months, studying its composition through spectroscopy, measuring its outgassing patterns as solar radiation heated its ancient ices, analyzing its trajectory with the kind of precision that modern astronomy makes possible. It was scientifically fascinating, but ultimately just another cosmic wanderer, a frozen relic from another stellar nursery passing through our system on its endless journey through the galaxy, or so we thought. 3 days ago, the astronomer continued, her voice barely above a whisper, 3I Atlas began emitting a signal, and she played the audio file. It was unlike anything I had ever heard. Not the random static of cosmic background radiation, not the rhythmic pulses of a pulsar. This was structured, mathematically precise, a sequence of electromagnetic pulses in the radio spectrum that repeated with such exactitude that no natural phenomenon could account for it. The pattern was unmistakable. It was a transmission, and it was coming from an object that had traveled for eons through interstellar space, an object that we had assumed was simply ice and rock and organic compounds forged in the disk of some distant protoplanetary system. I sat down slowly, my hands gripping the armrest of the chair, because the implications were cascading through my mind like dominoes falling in infinite directions. If 3I Atlas was transmitting a signal, then it was not a natural object, or it had been modified, or it carried something, some form of technology or intelligence that had survived a journey through the absolute zero of interstellar space for a time frame that made human civilization look like a fleeting thought. "How long has it been transmitting?" I asked. And the answer made my blood run cold. "We don't know," she said. "We only detected it 3 days ago when it crossed a certain threshold distance from the sun. But when we analyzed the signal structure and cross-referenced it with our deep space monitoring archives, we found something that doesn't make sense. The signal appears to be older than the object itself." That statement hung in the air like a physical presence, older than the object itself. I asked them to explain, and they brought up the spectral analysis, The composition of 3I Atlas suggested it formed approximately 4.6 billion years ago, roughly contemporaneous with our own solar system's formation. But when they ran a quantum decay analysis on the carrier wave of the signal itself, using techniques we've developed for dating photons from the early universe, the results indicated that the signal's origin point was approximately 5.2 billion years ago, predating not just the object, but also the formation of Earth itself. That's impossible, I said, and I meant it, because according to everything we understand about physics and causality, you cannot transmit a signal that is older than the medium carrying it, unless, and this is where my mind began to fracture its assumptions, unless the signal was not generated by 3I Atlas, but stored within it, encoded into the very structure of the object at a quantum level, preserved across billions of years like information frozen in crystalline lattices, waiting for the right conditions to activate and broadcast. The team had spent 72 hours running every conceivable analysis. They had checked for equipment malfunction, solar interference, gravitational lensing effects that might distort our readings. They had brought in independent observatories from Chile to Hawaii to Australia, and every single facility confirmed the same thing. 3I Atlas was broadcasting a structured electromagnetic signal that by all physical measurements originated over 5 billion years ago, before Earth existed, before complex life was even possible in our corner of the universe. And it was doing so now as it passed through our solar system on what appeared to be a deliberately calculated trajectory. I spent the next week immersed in the data, barely sleeping, barely eating, my mind consumed by the mathematical beauty and existential terror of what we were witnessing. We began decoding the signal using every cryptographic and linguistic analysis tool available, from pattern recognition algorithms to information theory frameworks, and what emerged was both elegant and profoundly disturbing. The signal was not a message in the traditional sense. It was a coordinate system, a multidimensional map encoded in mathematical constants that appear universal. Ratios like pi and the fine structure constant and the golden ratio, things that any sufficiently advanced civilization would recognize regardless of their biology or cultural context. The map pointed to a region of space approximately 37,000 light-years from Earth in the direction of the galactic core, a dense cluster of ancient stars that formed in the early epochs of our galaxy's history when the universe itself was barely 3 billion years old. We call this region the galactic habitable zone core, where stellar density is high and the probability of planetary systems and complex chemistry has been elevated for 10 billion years. If intelligence was going to emerge anywhere in the Milky Way, statistical models have always suggested it would be there first. And now we had what appeared to be a signpost, an ancient beacon embedded in a traveling object, directing attention to that precise location. But that wasn't the most disturbing part. When we analyzed the transmission's modulation patterns, we discovered it was not constant, it was responding. The signal strength and frequency shifted subtly based on 3I Atlas's position relative to Earth, as if it was adjusting itself to maintain optimal reception for our planet specifically. Not for Mars, not for Jupiter, but for Earth. As if something or someone had programmed this object billions of years ago with knowledge of where Earth would be, what it would become, and when it would develop the technological capability to detect and decode this message. I want you to pause and consider the staggering implications of what I'm describing. An object forged in the early days of our galaxy's formation, encoded with a message or map or warning, sent on a trajectory calculated with such precision that it would arrive at our solar system at the exact moment in cosmic history when a species on the third planet from our sun would be capable of understanding it. This level of foresight and technological mastery suggests a civilization operating on time frames and scales that make our entire recorded history look like a heartbeat. They were thinking in billions of years, in galactic rotations, in the evolution of consciousness itself across the cosmos. The NASA team wanted to keep this classified, to study it further before any public disclosure, but word began leaking through the international astronomical community. Observatories in Russia and China and the European Southern Observatory were all tracking 3I Atlas now, all confirming the signal, all running their own analyses, and the conclusions were converging on something that no government or institution could suppress for long. We were not looking at a natural phenomenon. We were looking at alien technology, ancient beyond comprehension, deliberately sent across the galaxy with a message for whoever would eventually be listening. Then came the breakthrough that changed everything. A mathematician at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, someone who specializes in topological data analysis and higher dimensional geometry, discovered something embedded in the deeper layers of the signal structure. Beneath the coordinate map was another level of information, a kind of cosmic metadata. And when translated through the mathematical framework that the signal itself provided, it formed something that can only be described as a warning. The warning was not in words, it was in concepts, pure mathematical relationships that conveyed meaning through structure rather than language. And what it conveyed was this: the region of space indicated by the coordinates, that ancient stellar nursery in the galactic core, was marked as quarantined. The signal contained what can best be described as a cosmic hazard designation, a universal symbol system indicating that something in that region of space was dangerous, not in a physical sense like a black hole or supernova, but dangerous in a way that threatened consciousness itself. The signal used mathematical constructs that we're only beginning to understand in quantum information theory, suggesting that whatever exists in that region can affect or corrupt or consume information at the quantum level, the very substrate of thought and awareness and identity. I have spent my entire career wrestling with the deepest mysteries of the universe, from the possibility of multiple dimensions beyond our perception to the nature of consciousness and its relationship to quantum mechanics. But this warning implied something I had never seriously considered, that consciousness itself might be vulnerable to predation or manipulation on a cosmic scale, that intelligence and awareness might not be the pinnacle of evolution, but rather a beacon that attracts attention from things that exist in states we cannot currently comprehend, operating on principles that transcend our physics. The night I fully grasped this implication, I stood outside my home looking up at the stars with a feeling I had not experienced since childhood, a mixture of wonder and primal fear, because if 3I Atlas was indeed a warning buoy, an ancient signpost left by a civilization that understood these cosmic dangers, then its arrival now, at this specific moment in human history, when we are just beginning to broadcast our presence to the galaxy through radio signals and space exploration, might not be coincidental. It might be a last-ditch alert, a final message from cosmic ancestors we never knew we had, telling us to be silent, to hide, to not draw attention to ourselves, because there are things in the universe that notice when intelligence awakens. The scientific community is now fractured on how to proceed. Some argue we should immediately send focused transmissions toward the coordinates provided by 3I Atlas to establish contact with whatever civilization might still exist there, or to understand the nature of the threat they warned about. Others, myself increasingly among them, believe we should treat this as humanity's first and perhaps only message from a galactic community that learned terrible lessons we have yet to face, that the great silence we've always wondered about, the Fermi paradox asking where all the aliens are, might not be because intelligence is rare, but because intelligence that broadcasts its presence doesn't survive long enough to be detected. There's another layer to this that keeps me awake at night. 3I Atlas is not slowing down. Its trajectory will take it back out of our solar system within a few months, heading deeper into interstellar space on a path that our models suggest will eventually take it toward another stellar system approximately 800,000 years from now, and the signal is still transmitting, which means this is not an artifact or a dormant probe that activated when it detected our technology. This is an active system that has been broadcasting its warning for billions of years across countless star systems, and automated guardian carrying a message through the ages. And we are just one of potentially thousands or millions of civilizations that have received this warning across the galaxy's history. What happened to those other civilizations, the ones that received this message before us? Did they heed the warning and remain silent? Or did they investigate and discover something that we should hope to never encounter? And more troubling still, if this is a warning about a specific region of space, what about the rest of the galaxy? Are there other dangers, other regions that were deemed too hazardous but never got their warning beacons? Are we operating in the dark in a cosmic landscape filled with predators and pitfalls that ancient civilizations mapped out, but we're only now beginning to glimpse? The signal from 3i Atlas also contained temporal markers, timestamps encoded in the decay of quantum states that suggest when the beacon was first created and launched. And those markers indicate that this object was sent on its journey approximately 5.2 billion years ago, which places its origin in the early era of galaxy formation when the Milky Way was still a chaotic and violent place filled with supernova explosions and stellar collisions. The civilization that created 3i Atlas would have been among the first intelligent species to emerge in our galaxy, potentially the first, the precursors who arose when the universe itself was barely 8 billion years old, and they used their technology not to conquer or colonize, but to warn, to send these beacons across the galaxy as their final act before something happened to them. What happened to them is the question that haunts me most deeply. Did they encounter the thing they were warning about? Did they sacrifice themselves to study it and gather enough information to encode this warning? Or did they transcend, evolve into something beyond physical form that no longer needs to exist in conventional space-time, and they left these beacons behind as breadcrumbs for the younger species that would eventually follow their path? Either way, the message is clear. There is something in the galactic core, something ancient and dangerous and incomprehensible, and we have been warned. NASA has now established a dedicated research division to study the 3i Atlas signal, bringing together cosmologists, quantum physicists, linguists, philosophers, even consciousness researchers, because the nature of the warning seems to transcend purely physical threats. We're dealing with something that challenges our understanding of what intelligence is, what consciousness means on a cosmic scale, and what role we play in a galactic ecosystem that might be far more complex and dangerous than we ever imagined. There's talk of sending a probe to the coordinates, a mission that would take thousands of years, even at our current theoretical maximum velocities. A generational message in a bottle that might arrive at that region of space only to find ruins or silence or something that makes us wish we had never looked. I have always believed that the universe is comprehensible, that given enough time and intellectual effort, humanity could eventually understand the fundamental laws governing reality itself, from quantum mechanics to consciousness to the ultimate fate of the cosmos. But 3i Atlas has introduced a new variable into that equation. The possibility that some knowledge is dangerous, that some regions of understanding come with costs that outweigh the benefits, that perhaps the reason we see no evidence of advanced galactic civilizations is not because they don't exist, but because the ones that survive learn to hide, to remain small and quiet and beneath the threshold of notice for whatever it is that notices. As 3i Atlas continues its journey back into interstellar space, its signal slowly fading as the distance increases, I find myself returning to fundamental questions that I thought I had answered decades ago. Questions about why we search for extraterrestrial intelligence, what we hope to find, what we fear we might discover, and whether humanity is ready for the implications of contact. Not contact with benevolent cosmic teachers who will share their wisdom, but contact with a universe that might be far more predatory and indifferent than our hopeful projections have assumed. The teenage children who come to my lectures often ask me if I believe aliens exist, and I always tell them that the mathematics and scale of the universe make it statistically impossible for us to be alone. Billions of galaxies, each containing billions of stars, many with planetary systems. The sheer numbers demand that life and intelligence must have emerged elsewhere. But now I add a caveat, a darker footnote to that optimistic calculation. I tell them that intelligence might exist in abundance across the cosmos, but survival might be the rare exception, that the universe might be filled with the ruins and relics of civilizations that reached our level and then made one critical mistake. They announced themselves too loudly. They investigated too deeply. They crossed some cosmic threshold that we have been warned not to cross. The philosophical implications of 3I Atlas extend beyond exobiology and cosmology into the realm of epistemology and ethics. If we receive a clear warning from what appears to be an elder civilization, do we have a moral obligation to heed it, to restrain our curiosity and ambition in favor of survival? Or is the urge to explore and understand so fundamental to consciousness itself that suppressing it would mean becoming something less than fully aware? These are not abstract academic questions anymore. They have become immediate policy considerations as governments and space agencies debate whether to respond to the signal, to investigate the coordinates, or to do what the warning seems to suggest: stay silent, stay hidden, and hope that whatever exists in the galactic core remains unaware of our existence. There's a bitter irony in this moment. For decades, we have searched the skies for any sign of extraterrestrial intelligence. We built radio telescopes and sent golden records into space and scanned millions of frequencies, hoping for just one unambiguous signal that would confirm we are not alone. And now we have received that signal, clear and undeniable and ancient beyond measure. And it is telling us to be afraid, telling us that the universe is not the empty playground we hoped it would be, but rather a dark forest where predators lurk and the wise remain unseen. It's as if we finally found the message we were searching for, only to discover it's a message we wish we had never received. I often think about the scientists and engineers who first detected the signal from 3I Atlas, that initial moment of recognition when they realized they were looking at something artificial, something intelligent, how quickly their excitement must have turned to confusion and then to dread as they decoded the warning embedded within it. They had achieved what every astronomer dreams of: first contact with extraterrestrial intelligence, and simultaneously they had uncovered evidence that such contact might be humanity's greatest mistake. These are people who devoted their lives to expanding human knowledge. And now they carry the burden of knowing something that might be too dangerous to fully share, too world-shattering to release without careful preparation. The public response when portions of this information began leaking was predictable in its diversity. Some embraced it as validation of long-held beliefs about ancient aliens and cosmic conspiracies. Others dismissed it as misinterpreted data or elaborate hoax, despite the growing body of peer-reviewed confirmation. And a significant portion of humanity simply continued with their daily lives, unable or unwilling to integrate the implications of what 3I Atlas represents, because accepting that we have received a cosmic warning requires reconstructing one's entire worldview. It means acknowledging that human civilization exists in a context vastly more complex and dangerous than our everyday concerns about politics and economics and social dynamics. It means accepting that we might not be the authors of our own destiny, but rather participants in a drama that began billions of years before we existed and will continue long after we're gone. As I write this, 3I Atlas is currently beyond the orbit of Mars, its signals still detectable but growing fainter, and there's a sense of urgency in the scientific community to extract every possible piece of information before it passes beyond our ability to study it closely. We have learned so much in these few months about ancient stellar engineering, about information encoding at quantum levels, about the possible structure of galactic-scale civilizations and their methods of communication across impossible timescales, but the core question remains unanswered. What specifically is the danger they were warning about? And is it still there, waiting in that ancient region of the galactic core? Or has it spread, evolved, moved to other parts of the galaxy? Could it already be aware of us? So I ask you, as I ask myself each morning, when I wake to face another day of this knowledge, what should humanity do? Should we investigate the galactic core and confront whatever danger the ancient civilization warned about? Should we remain silent and hidden, hoping to avoid detection? Should we attempt to send our own warnings to civilizations that will arise after us? And perhaps most importantly, are we capable of making these decisions collectively as a species? Or will our fragmented nature, our competing nations and ideologies and interests prevent us from responding coherently to a threat or opportunity that transcends all earthly divisions? The signal from 3i Atlas continues its journey across the galaxy, and somewhere, perhaps in star systems that don't even have names yet, perhaps around planets where life is just beginning to emerge from primordial oceans, that signal will arrive millions of years from now. And if those worlds eventually give rise to intelligence, they too will one day detect this ancient warning and face the same impossible choice we now face. And I wonder what they will decide. And I wonder if we will still exist by then to share our own story of how we responded to the warning, or if we will have become another cautionary tale, another extinct civilization that received the message but chose the wrong path, another layer of cosmic archaeology for future species to study and mourn. Follow this journey as we continue decoding what may be the universe's final warning to anyone willing to listen, because 3i Atlas has not finished speaking, and we have barely begun to understand what it's trying to tell us about the nature of intelligence, consciousness, and survival in a universe far more alive and aware and dangerous than we ever dared to imagine. And the question that will define our species is not whether we are alone, but whether we will remain free. What do you think humanity should do with this warning? And have you noticed anything unusual in your night sky that you cannot explain?